What's going on, guys? Welcome to another tutorial. This is going to be something that I'm going to be regularly doing on my channel. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to get the Joker look. Now, this is going to be a two-part series for this movie, as I have some other exterior footage that I think closely matches some of the shots from the movie. I mean, there's just so many beautiful shots in this film. The cinematography is just gorgeous, and it's just impossible just to pick one shot. Today, I'm going to be working with a shot I filmed a couple weeks back and showing you how I recreated this look. So, guys, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel to watch more of these kind of videos, and make sure to check out my Instagram and follow me there. Okay, so let's get on with it. Okay, so let's analyze this image for a sec and see what's going on. At the bottom here, we can see an overall spectrum of the color scheme in this image. And you can see there's just a lot of cyan. You got this kind of dirty orangey red going on here in the midtones. And up here, we can see that the highlights, again, is just all this type of off-white cyan, which is all this over here. And same thing going on again in the midtones and again in the shadows with this orangey off red type of look that we got coming through in the window. So I'm just going to pull up my scopes here, and again, starting with my vector scope, you can see how much cyan is in this image. I mean, just look at it. It's just, look how far this is pushed. And again, the reds coming through the window here. And to get this cyan look, it's achieved by pulling down the reds in the shadows and lifting the greens and the blues. And here in the highlights, you can see that the greens are pushed higher with the reds pulled way down and the blues, well, just a little bit lower than the greens here. And you can see the same thing going on in the waveform. Now, most of this look is already created using the correct type of lighting to get this kind of contrast. So this is the shot that I'm going to be working with, and I'm just going to leave it somewhere around here and start setting up this node tree. The first thing I'm going to be doing, once again, I'm going to use my first node for noise reduction and just turn that off for a second. Second one is going to be my exposure, and the next one is going to be my look. Now, this is going to be a two-part look because this wasn't shot perfectly. I just kind of sort of did this on the fly, and you can already see that I'm going to have some issues here because this doesn't look nowhere near as warm as I need it to be. Because once I start pulling in all this cyan into the highlights and the shadows, this red is just going to disappear. This is not going to look correct at all. So I'm going to have to do, some jiggery pokery type of thing going on with masking this out and trying to select this red and bring this out. Otherwise, it's not going to look right at all. So my first node for the look is going to be creating the cyan, and the second one, I'm going to create a parallel node here. This is going to be my reds. The next one I'm going to want to maybe have another one for my skin. I'm not going to name that for right now. And I'm looking at this shot, and maybe this bottle and this part here holding up the shelf. So I'm going to create another one, and I'm just going to call this one green. No, I'm going to call this one bottle. I don't want to confuse myself. The next one I'm going to create another node, and I'm going to call this one mask 1 because I want to try and create some drama in this image. Because if I bring up this real quick and I select the shot that I want, I turn on selected still images, you can see here that I shot this on the fly, so I didn't have any negative fill or anything. This is lit so nice. You can see that there's so much shadow on his back compared to mine, and that's just, taking your time with the lighting setup and things. So you know, I need to try to cheat this a little bit. So I'm gonna have this one and call this one mask 1, and then just in case, I'm gonna have another node for a second mask. And then I'm gonna have another node. Let me just move this out the way, and I'm gonna call this one look adjustment. I'm gonna create another node, and this is already pretty sharp. I don't think I need to sharpen it anymore. So I'm just gonna call this one, this is gonna be my grain. Okay, so there's my look tree, and I'm gonna begin to try to start to replicate this look right here. Okay, so in my first node here, I'm gonna start by pulling up my contrast, and I wanna be careful here because I don't want this chair here and these blacks here to get too crushed, because if you see the darkest parts of these images, they're not crushed. I mean, they are low on the charts, but they're not destroyed. So I'm just gonna be a little cautious here, and I'm gonna leave it somewhere around there for now. Then I'm gonna take my gamma, and I'm gonna start pulling this down a little bit. Somewhere about there. I'm gonna leave my lift alone for now, and I might just pull up my highlights just a little bit, because if you look at here on his shoulder, how bright that is, and how bright my shoulder is just under this light, I'm gonna leave it there just for now. Okay, so now I'm gonna try and start pulling in some of the cyan that we see going on in this image. And if you look here, you can see where I need to start pulling things. So I'm gonna take my lift, and I'm gonna pull down my reds. If you look here, you can see this happening and matching up with this one. And I'm gonna pull this down. You can see how this is coming into play somewhere around there. And then now I'm going to take my gain, and I'm going to start pulling this into the cyan color here. So I'm going to come way down. I'm going to probably, that's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to take my midtones, because this is the tricky thing, right? You can see all this cyan here, but his skin doesn't look as green as mine. So I'm going to try to fix that a little bit here by pulling this way a little bit. And I've got to be careful, because I don't want to start losing this cyan that I just brought into the image. So now coming into my red node, I need to try to get this color and how saturated this is and bring this out, because here it doesn't look anything like it. And looking at this, I have another problem. It's way too overexposed. So trying to grab these bits here is going to be tricky. So let's see how much of this I can grab. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of this for a second, and I'm going to come into my qualifier, and I'm going to see what I can grab from this. So let's see if I can grab, well, it's too much. That's okay. See if I can grab a little bit more. No, let me see. No. Let me see how much of this. I'm gonna leave that there for a sec, because I'm definitely getting enough, but obviously this is gonna introduce a lot of noise, so I gotta start moving some of these around with the hue, the saturation, and luminance. So I'm just expand this a little bit. And then I'm gonna kind of pull this back. Not too much. Somewhere around there. I'm gonna take my highs and I'm gonna leave that around there. I'm just looking at how much I can smooth this out at the minute. I'm going to take my lows and soften them so we can blend them in nicely. And then I'm going to come down here into my luminance and I'm just going to pull this back just a little bit. See how that's softening up? And somewhere around there. And then I'm going to pull this back a little bit. I'm going to take my low soft, expand this out a little bit, and then again with my highs, just to try to smooth all of this out. Okay, then I'm going to come into my denoiser, and I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, take my blur radius, and really go to town on it. So somewhere around there. Now this is looking pretty good. I've got a decent amount of this red coming through, and I've got it a little bit here on the wall, but I don't think I can select any more without adding too much around here. So I'm going to take a mask and I'm going to use the curve mask, and I'm just going to start selecting out just the pieces of red that I want to try to grab. And then now, look how much that's cleaned that up. So if I come into here now, this is looking pretty good. I'm going to, oops. I'm just going to tweak this a little bit. There. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my saturation here, and I'm going to pull it up quite a bit, and I'm going to leave it somewhere around there. And then I'm going to start pushing this towards red. So first of all, I'm going to take my offset shadow that I already got going on and just kind of making it look believable. Like if you've just looked at this right now, you probably wouldn't. It's hard to tell that there's a mask going on. If I turn it off and on, you can clearly see that there is one. But looking at this with fresh eyes, to me, that's looking pretty believable. Okay, so now I want to come into my second mask, and this time I'm going to create one. And this time I'm going to create a linear mask, and I'm going to pull this somewhere around there, pull this back, pull this down, and soften this way up, and try to brighten this side up a little bit. So I'm going to take my gamma, I'm going to pull this up just a little bit, and then I'm going to take my gain and brighten that up somewhere around there. I'm going to come back into my gain and lower this down. And then now, turning this off and on, that's looking pretty good. Let me just look at this once again. I'm going to pull this back here a little bit. See what's going on. Again, just trying to make it look believable there. I'm going to take this, pull this over here, soften that up, And then now that's looking a lot better. So looking back at what we have here, from where I've started from to this, that's looking good. That's looking really cool. So I'm gonna come in here into my look adjustment, and I'm gonna go into my log wheels, look at my, turn this off and on. We can see how much that's smoothing out my skin. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. So then now what I need to do is come into here, grab a circular mask, turn this slightly, and kind of just try to select just my skin, because I don't want the rest of the image to start going super soft. Now, I could come in here and select my skin tone, but I think it's going to be hard to pull out because how much cyan and green is in my skin with the rest of all this. So this is just going to be an easier way for me to do that without driving myself crazy trying to pull out my skin here. So again, turning this on and off, that's looking pretty nice. So looking at the side by side, I'm pretty happy with that. Now we're pretty close right now. The only thing I need to start doing is adding some contrast difference between how bright this image is, here versus here. And then I want to try to brighten up this section here, looking at here. And then I want to kind of work on this bottle and just try to make it look like this. Okay, so if I come into my bottle node here and I come up to color, presets, green, I'm going to come into my qualifier and just start seeing how much of this I can grab. Pull this somewhere around there, bump up the saturation. Now we're getting a little bit of that shelf that I want. And let me see how far I can pull down this luminance. That's looking, let's see how much I can bring out here. Bring these two back up. I'm going to bring my gamma up. To about there. Maybe brighten up a little bit. And now I'm going to add some saturation into this. So turning this off and on, that's looking pretty good. Let me see how much. That's looking okay. Let me just bring this up a little bit more. Again, let me turn this off and on. Okay, so that's helping. That's looking good. Now I'm going to come into my first mask and start separating this and make it look like I have some kind of negative fill going on here on my back, and just darkening the corner of this image up in the background. Let's give this a shot. I'm going to come in here again into my curve tool. Just kind of, I select around here, just following the shadows on my back that are already lightly there. I'm gonna come up here. I don't want to darken this red because I don't want to lose what we have going on. So I'm gonna come this way, come up here, and then I'm gonna pull this back to darken that wall up a little bit. And I'm gonna soften this up, not too much. I'm just gonna leave it somewhere around there for now. And then I'm I'm going to get rid of that so we can see what's going on. I'm going to take my highs, I'm going to bring this back up, and I'm going to take my highs and pull them down. Somewhere around there. Bring up my midtones a little bit. I'm going to come back in here and feather this out some more. And just try to start making this look natural. So I'm going to pull this back a little bit. And just, I'm going to keep turning this off and on. And then soften this up some more. Pull this forward again. It's looking close. I'm going to pull this up a little bit higher here. There we go. You see what, I'm just following this shadow that I already got going on and just kind of making it look believable. Like if you've just looked at this right now, you probably wouldn't. It's hard to tell that there's a mask going on. If I turn it off and on, you can clearly see that there is one. But looking at this with fresh eyes, to me, that's looking pretty believable. Okay, so now I want to come into my second mask, and this time I'm going to create a linear mask, and I'm going to pull this somewhere around there, pull this back, pull this down, and soften this way up, and try to brighten this side up a little bit. So I'm going to take my gamma, I'm going to pull this up just a little bit, and then I'm going to take my gain and brighten that up somewhere around there. I'm going to come back into my gain and lower this down. And then now, turning this off and on, that's looking pretty good. Let me just take this, pull this over here, soften that up. And then now that's looking a lot better. So looking back at what we have here, from where I've started from to this, that's looking really cool. So I'm going to come in here into my look adjustment, and I'm going to go into my log wheels, look at my parade here, and just start pulling this down a little bit. Also, I'm going to take my low range and I just want those low lows. I don't want to affect too much. So come back in here again, lower this down, and that's looking good. I'm going to look at this again, and I'm going to take my gamma, just lower this down just a little bit. Just, there's not really much in it, but I think it helps. I'm going to look again at I'm going to come into my look, and I'm just looking. See, this is the tricky thing with manipulating these two color contrast, because we have all this cyan here in the red, but his skin looks a little bit more magenta-y blue. So I'm going to see if I can squeeze a little bit more of that color in my skin without losing this cyan that I want going on here. So maybe if I just pull this down a little bit, I can kind of even the split here. Maybe pull that back just a smidge. A little bit more cyan in the lows. And that's looking good. Let me make this big and compare these two again. Now, looking at this, the only like certain things I can get sort of fussy with is the camera is obviously behind a wall right here. I put a box here to try to make this look like this, like the where the camera is. I can make this look a little bit more like this by warming it up. But this is just being fussy. I'm pretty happy looking at these two. I think it's looking really nice. So coming back out of here, I'm going to come into my noise reduction node, turn this on, and I'm going to turn this on 3, better, bring both of these up to 4.8, turn this on, enhance. This will slow your computer down if you have a computer or anything like mine. And I'm going to turn this off and just pull up the chroma, and yeah, that's cleaning it up nicely. And I'm going to come into my film grain, and I'm going to turn this off a sec because my computer will just fight me. And I'm going to turn the grain strength up just a little bit to kind of glue everything back together again. If I turn this off and on, maybe back a little bit. Turn this back on. Let me bump this up a little bit more actually. And there you go. Obviously, the light that they're using here is a lot brighter than what I have going on. I could try to bring these highlights up a little bit more. Actually, let me just try to do that. Let me pull that to about there. I need to come back into my mask again now and pull this way. Turn this off and on. I want to pull the lows down a little bit because I'm losing some contrast. Because I'm losing some of the shadows there. Compare these two. And there you go. So just taking another look at this image here, you can see how much cyan is pushed into this image. I mean, there's just so much. It's so saturated. And again, there's a little bit more saturation in the reds than what I have in mind. So I'm going to jump back in, and I'm going to come into my red node. And actually, first of all, I'm going to line this up because you can see mine is off just a little bit. So I'm going to come into my hue versus hue, and I'm going to pull this down. So now we're matching up. Actually, the saturation is looking pretty good. So let me just pull this down a nudge. Somewhere around there. And then I'm going to come back into my look node, and you can see where my cyan is versus how much saturation is in this one. So I'm going to come into my hue versus saturation, select cyan, and start pulling this up. And I'm actually going to come into my hue versus hue and just pull this a little bit. Just a little that way. Come into my hue versus sat again. And there we go. So that's looking a lot better. I like that. I like what that's doing in the midtones and highlights, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna come into my look adjustment, and I'm gonna come into my Luma versus Sat, and I'm gonna select some of these lows, and I'm just gonna pull, let me just make this big. I'm just gonna pull some of the saturation out of the shadows, just a smidge, to kind of clean this up a little bit. Again, the only two things that sort of bother me about this are these highs in here, and my skin is ever so slightly different, but that's mostly, again, due to the lighting. I'm going to see if I can just push it towards the blue just a little bit more without losing the color that I have going on up here. So let me just pull this a little bit more here. And just leave it there. Actually, you know what? I wanna get rid of this red right here. It doesn't look believable to me. So let me just come back into my mask and just take this out. Just get rid of that there. So when I move, it just looks like the reds and the orangey kind of color is coming through the window, and it's not. This is something else. Okay, guys, so I'm gonna leave it there. I could always fiddle around a little bit more, but I'm pretty freaking stoked with how this came out. Let's just quickly go over everything that I did so you can get a little recap here. The first thing I did was fix the exposure and just add overall contrast and some color into the image. And then I pulled in some cyan into the image to bring it into this world. And then I used my red node here to bring out these colors in the background coming through the window. And then on my next node, I kind of just smoothed out my skin, because if you look at Joaquin Phoenix's skin here, it's super smooth. So I just cleaned that up a little bit. And then I just wanted this bottle here to pop out a little bit more. Actually, let me just brighten that up a little bit. And then I created another node, and I masked out this following the shadows that were already kind of faintly there to try to mimic this negative fill going on behind him. And then I added another mask to brighten this area up to match this area here. And the last thing I did was just kind of overall a look adjustment to kind of like darken up the shadows a little bit and just make it pop. And the last thing I did was add in some film grain just to make this really look sexy. And then finally, some noise reduction to clean things up. So let's look at these two side by side in full screen and check it out. Okay guys, so that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you share this with your friends, subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and comment what you think I should do next. Thanks for watching.